Welcome back to the Week 4 matchup show. The other fantasy guys here, Dr. Lovejoy and the other Coach K, are still on assignment. They should be with us sometime. The professor here anyways to give you the great information you need to score a lot of points this week and hopefully win this week and get on your way to a championship. First matchup that we got is Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore. It's the Thursday night game. And there's not much to talk about with Cleveland except for Trent Richardson. You know, he's a good, solid running back, but he is going to be going up against the Ravens' tough defense. So I don't know if I really like him that much. He might get you some points. He's probably a decent flex play. Maybe you have somebody on your bench that's better than him this week. Other than that, on their team, there's not too much I like. Baltimore, you got Joe Flacco. He's been going off. He's thrown 6 touchdowns already this year, over 900 yards. Cleveland's defense is not that great, so I think he'll do pretty good. Torrey Smith is having some ball games. He's a big play guy. Anquan Bolden will even catch some balls, so I think both of those receivers will score you some points. As always, Ray Rice is a must start. And Dennis Pitta has come out of nowhere. He's actually second leading on the team in catches, and he's already got 2 touchdowns this year. And Baltimore's defense is always strong. So if you got some Baltimore guys, they'll score you some points. The next matchup we have in Week 4 is the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. Cam Newton's been off to a rough start. I think it continues. Atlanta's got a really good defense, a great pass defense. They'll find a way to shut down his running abilities. I don't see him going off for, above average points. You may even look to see if you have someone on your bench that might score more points than him. They have a 2-headed running monster in D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. It's tough to say who's going to get the carries. I really don't like starting either of them. Steve Smith, you always have to start just because he could go off for 100 yards. Other than that, they don't have too many receivers on their receiving core I'd worry about. Atlanta, Matt Ryan has been on fire. That guy he's been lighting it up with his receivers of Julio Jones and Roddy White. Obviously any of those 3 guys, you've got to start them. They're going to continue to be on fire. Michael Turner, I'm liking in their running game. He finally showed up last week. I think he'll actually be a decent play in this week against Carolina's defense. And Tony Gonzalez, if you have him, he'll score you some touchdowns. They always look for him in the red zone. The next matchup we have is the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. I think Stephen Ridley, who started out hot, I think he's still going to find it a rough go this week against Buffalo's tough run defense. And therefore, Tom Brady's probably going to get a few extra throws out, and he's going to probably score some more points. So I like Tom Brady. I like his receivers in Brandon Lloyd and Wes Welker, and of course Gronkowski. As far as Buffalo's side, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's up and down. I don't know if we can go with him. C.J. Spiller got hurt last week. Is he going to start? You're going to have to definitely watch the injury report. Otherwise, you might have to pick up Tashard Choice if you can get him out of waivers, and that way you can start him if C.J. Spiller's not going to play. Stevie Johnson, he's actually been doing very well this year. He'll continue to score you some points because they will get him the ball. Other than that, Fred Davis, I'm not too high on him this week as far as a tight end. Look somewhere else. The next matchup we have for going into Week 4 is the Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. This is kind of an interesting one because not a lot of people have drafted or signed, Christian Ponder or even Kyle Rudolph, both out of the Vikings. And last week, Christian Ponder was actually a number 4 quarterback scoring, and Kyle Rudolph is actually 6th in points scored overall this year. So you may look for those 2 guys. They may be available in a lot of your leagues. Anyways, Adrian Peterson, as always, he's going to be back. He's going to be running the ball. He's going to get you a lot of points. Play him. Same with Percy Harvin. He's actually got 27 receptions already in 3 games. So he is a big part of their offense. He will continue to get the ball. As far as the Detroit side, you've got to be a little concerned if you have Matt Stafford with his injury last week. He says he's going to be able to start, but once again, it's probably going to be a game time decision. So if you do have him, pay attention to that. And if he's not playing, you got to look somewhere else on your team. Calvin Johnson, he's their offense. So if you have him, you're definitely playing him. He's going to catch the ball a ton of times this game. It's going to be a fun game. Other than that, there's not too many other people on Detroit that are going to score too many points against the Vikings run defense. The next matchup we have is the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. And for the Tennessee Titans, there's not a lot to like. Chris Johnson, he has been a huge disappointment so far through the first 3 weeks. I don't know if he's going to get it going this week. hopefully he's going to be on your bench. You've probably got a better option somewhere on your team. Other than that, the receivers, Nate Washington, Kenny Britt, they're going to do all right, but Jake Locker, I don't have too much confidence in him. You've probably got also better wide receivers on your team that you can start over them. As far as the offensive juggernaut that is Houston, Matt Schaub, he is on fire. He continues to throw deep down the field to Andre Johnson. If you've got either of those guys, you will definitely score points this week. And Arian Foster, as always, he will be scoring a lot of points. There is one guy to maybe look for, and that's Owen Daniels. He's a tight end in the Houston offense that he will get you some points at the tight end position if you have him this week, because Tennessee does like to give up points to the tight ends. And the next matchup we have on our list for Week 4 is the San Diego Chargers at Kansas City Chiefs. Phillip Rivers was disappointing to say the least last week, where he only scored in between 2 and 4 points probably in your league. He was horrible. So guess what? The only where he can go from there is up. So he's actually going to do better than he did last week. But he is going against a Kansas City defense that likes to give up points to receivers. I actually look for him to have a good bounce back game. He will put you up points like he's used to doing. Ryan Matthews is back. He's going to be a big part of their offense. He only got a few points last week, but last week their offense looked horrible. So he will score a lot more points for them this week. And if you have him, you're probably looking to start him. As always, look for Antonio Gates, Malcolm Floyd, Robert Meacham, any of those guys. They're going to get some action in the offense. Kansas City, I'm not a huge fan of Matt Castle. Jerome Charles had a monster week last week, and he's going to try to continue. San Diego's run defense is pretty tough, but he's going to get the ball now a good share of the time just because of that performance he had last week. So if you have him, you probably got to start him. And Dwayne Bowe has 18 catches already this season, so in a PPR league, if you have Dwayne Bowe, look to start him because he'll get you some extra points there. Next on our agenda is the San Francisco 49ers at the New York Jets. Alex Smith, who up until last week was making a case to be a starting quarterback on your fantasy roster, has now lost a little bit of our hope. So I don't go starting him if you have him. He's going to be going up against the Jets defense that, yes, Revis is out and they're a little banged up, but it is still the Jets defense. Frank Gore is going to be involved in that run game a lot just to keep the ball, keep momentum. So look for Frank Gore to have a decent day, but still not too many of the Niner receivers you can count on. Maybe Crabtree. Vernon Davis, as always, you can start him, and as a tight end position, they will be able to find him. And for the Jets, you can't like Sanchez. When's Tebow going to start playing? I know everybody's asking that question, especially in New York. Sean Green, that 49er rush defense is really, really strong, so he's not going to score you too many points. Really, Santonio Holmes is probably one of the only Jets you're actually going to start this week. Next matchup, we have the Seattle Seahawks versus the St. Louis Rams. I'm sure you've all seen all the highlights with that touchdown catch that was a fiasco with the fake referees. Anyways, some of you, that may have actually helped win your fantasy game last week. To those of you, congratulations. To those of you who were heartbroken by that catch, I'm sorry. It is the NFL and fake refs, and until we get the real ones back, there's going to be some points scored in some crazy ways. In this game, there may be some of that also. Seattle's defense has looked really good, and actually out of almost all their players on their team besides Marshawn Lynch, the only part of their team I would look to start this week would be their defense. For St. Louis, Bradford's not that great. I don't think he's your best option. You probably have somebody on your team better, another quarterback. Steven Jackson is injured. He says he wants to play this week, but once again, just pay attention to the injury report, whether he starts or not. Other than that, Danny Amendola, Brandon Gibson. Amendola, you can start him. He'll get some looks. And Brandon Gibson, he's had a few big catches, so he's kind of a crapshoot, but you could start him. Other than that, there's not too much to like about this game except for some crazy defensive plays. And that brings us to Miami Dolphins at the Arizona Cardinals, who are 3-0, by the way. And their defense looks really strong. If you've seen what they've done the last few weeks, and these are to good teams, mind you, their defense is good. Their defense is no joke. But once again, that's probably the only thing I can really talk good, except for Larry Fitzgerald. He finally came on strong. They're going to get him the ball. They'll find a way to get him the ball. So you start him. You maybe start their defense. Other than that, Beanie Wells, Ryan Williams, they're splitting the carries. Are they hurt? What's going on? I mean, you can't really start either of those guys. And on the Miami side, Reggie Bush, but he got hurt last week. He's kind of a superhuman. He says he's going to be back. Watch the injury report that morning. It's probably a game time decision whether he plays or not. Other than that, maybe Brian Hartline. Other than that, you can't really look at too many of their wide receiving options in Miami. It's all Reggie Bush. He's 60% of that offense. And next on our matchup show is the Oakland Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Now, there's not much really to like on the Oakland side of the ball. Darren McFadden, he's definitely going to get the ball. He'll score you some points. I don't think Denver's defense is really going to be able to shut him down, and I think he's, after last week's performance, he's fired up. I think he'll do pretty well. Carson Palmer, I don't like him that much. Denarius Moore maybe, and that's only because Darius Hayward-Bay's out with injuries, so they're probably going to look to get him the ball. Who's going to fill in for him? Maybe Hagan, maybe Streeter. You may look to get one of those guys if you're really struggling at the wide receiver position, because they do fall behind, and that does mean they have to throw the ball late in games to try to get back in it. On the other side of the ball, you've got Peyton Manning. He's been a pretty solid play. He's going to definitely score you some points. He's a smart quarterback. He'll get you completions. He's going to get you points. Willis McGahee, against the Raider defense, I'm not a fan of him this week. But Eric Decker or Demaryius Thomas, both of them I think are going to do all right. Decker has 17 catches already this season, and Thomas has 16. And he's even got 2 touchdowns. That's the main difference between them two. Jacob Tammy's also a pretty good tight end on the Denver side of the line. And the next matchup we have in store for you is the Cincinnati Bengals at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cincinnati's looking pretty impressive on the offensive side of the ball. Andy Dalton, he spreads the ball around. He does a great job getting the ball to A.J. Green, who is a monster. Even their guy Hawkins and their tight end, Jermaine Gresham, gets some balls. He throws a lot of touchdowns. Andy Dalton's somebody that in a lot of leagues, he's probably still available, and he might be better than the quarterback you have right now, or at least the one on your bench. So you might check the waiver wire and see if you can get him. I know I did. Anyways, on the Jacksonville side of the ball, I'm not too high on Blaine Gabbert. Obviously, he's not distributing the ball well. MJD, he's a monster. He's going to get his carries. He's like the Reggie Bush of that offense. He's going to be 50 to 60% of the offense, catching the ball out of the backfield, running the ball. He always is bound to break one loose. MJD is a pretty good play. I'm not too high on any of the Jaguar receivers. Shorts, Blackman, Robinson, all of them have been underproduced so far this year. And even their tight end, Mercedes Lewis, I'm not a fan of him. On the Cincinnati side, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, he runs the ball, he gets the ball. He's scary, so you may look to start a lot of Bengals if you have Bengals this week. And now we bring you the next matchup, which is the New Orleans Saints at the Green Bay Packers. I'm sure you all saw what happened last week, and the Packers, I'm sure in their hearts feel they were robbed, and I'm pretty sure they're going to come out and play a really strong game. I think they felt they were robbed, and they're going to get a little emotional, and they're going to want to win. New Orleans, however, they're 0-3. They're very disappointing. They're not winning any ball games. Their offense is struggling. Drew Brees still will throw some touchdowns. He's still not a bad play. The running back situation is tough. Thomas, Ingram, who do you start? You can't really rely on either of them. Colston, Henderson, both the receivers on this New Orleans side of the ball. It's hard to trust them, especially with their offense struggling. But, I really think that this game is going to be a shootout. And I think there's going to be a lot of points scored on both sides of the ball, mainly in the passing game with Drew Brees, Colston Henderson, and with Aaron Rodgers, of course, as always, and with Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson. I think there's going to be a lot of balls thrown. Jermichael Finley will get in on the action. If you have him at tight end, look to play him. And Cedric Benson, I actually think this week finally might actually get it going against a weakened New Orleans defense. And the next matchup we have is the Washington Redskins at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Washington, the last week definitely struggled. RG3 struggled mightily. But guess what? He still put up over 25 points, most likely in your league, depending on how they score, and still put up points and still was a top 10 quarterback, to play. So going forward, you really continue to have to believe in him and hope that he can get the points, whether he runs the ball, throws some touchdowns. He's dynamic, so he definitely can get you some points. On the running back situation for them, Alfred Morris, he looks like he's going to be the guy Shanahan's using as number one. So if you got him, you may feel comfortable playing him. Receiving the ball, Pierre Garçon's still coming off that injury, so I don't know if you start him. It depends. Check the injury report that morning and see if he's starting. And Leonard Hankerson, I can't have much faith in him, and that's probably one of the reasons they're struggling. Fred Davis at tight end, he's all right. Don't expect him to go off this week or anything by all means, because they are playing the Buccaneers defense. On the Bucs side of the ball, Josh Freeman, he's struggled a little bit. He's had some up and down games. I don't see him doing that well against the Washington defense. Doug Martin will get his carries. He'll probably score you some points. He's probably a flex play at best. And Vincent Jackson, who's been a little bit disappointing this season except for just one breakout game. We'll see how he comes back week 4, but you may have to start him. And that brings us to the Sunday night matchup, which brings us the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. A division matchup, so it should be a good one. Michael Vick has been disappointing, to say the least. The last week, I believe he only scored maybe 5 points in your league, depending on how your league scores. LaShawn McCoy, he'll continue to get the ball. He's going to get some points, so definitely look for him. Vick against the Giants defense, it's tough to say that I love him. I think he's not going to do that great again. I think that defense is going to get some sacks on him. He's going to throw some interceptions. You still might have to play him. He still may be your best option, and the interceptions and sacks just means he'll get less points. Deshaun Jackson, I'm not a huge fan of him. Brent Selleck is probably one of the only bright sides besides McCoy of that offense. Brent Selleck actually has the tied for the most receptions on that team with Deshaun Jackson. So you can feel comfortable playing him at the tight end position if you have him on your team. As far as the Giants, Eli Manning, even if he falls behind and throws 2 or 3 interceptions in the first half, he still finds a way to throw you 3 touchdowns and get over 200 yards. He's still a good start at quarterback against this Eagles D. Andre Brown has been impressive coming and taking over for Bradshaw, who's been hurt. I look for him to continue to have a pretty good game. And same with Victor Cruz. Without Hakeem Nicks, I don't think he's going to be playing this week. Victor Cruz definitely should step up. You probably see some salsa dances in the end zone. And with the injuries, look at their tight end, Martellus Bennett. If he's available in your league, you may want to pick him up. He might be a better option at tight end than what you have on your team right now. And that brings us to the last matchup of the week, which is the Chicago Bears at the Dallas Cowboys. Chicago's offense, without Matt Forte, Michael Bush will be running the ball. He is actually filled in very nicely for Matt Forte, so I think he'll continue to do so. Especially Dallas defense isn't nothing to write home about. So I think that Michael Bush will actually have a pretty good day. Jay Cutler as well. I think he'll actually, do all right this week. I think he's going to get back on page with Brandon Marshall. So for all you Brandon Marshall owners out there, I think he'll have actually a pretty good week this week against Dallas's defense. Tony Romo, wow, if you like to ride the Romo coaster, if you want to call it, he's just been up and down. He'll have a great week 1, and then after that, you might have a better option on your bench, especially against the Chicago defense this week. Dez Bryant, Miles Austin. If Romo's throwing them the ball, I kind of like either of those guys, because if they do fall behind, they are going to have to throw in the second half, and that just does mean more yards for you if you have Dez Bryant or Miles Austin. Jason Witten, if he's playing, if he's healthy, Romo does like to throw him the ball, but you got to make sure he's playing and he's getting his full playing time. And that concludes Week 4 edition of The Other Fantasy Guys. Tune in next week where we'll talk about Week 5 and the matchups that are going on in next week's NFL games. Matter of fact, if you have a question about a matchup in your league, why not ask the professor? Post a question in our comment box below, right down there, and we'll go ahead and answer a couple of them on next week's show. So until next time, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and you can follow us on Twitter as well. Tune in next week where we show you how to make a real pigskin football with a replacement referee and a pig we got right out back.